Hello everyone, this is part 21 of What If Naruto Got His Wish, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Insects can be marvelously efficient life forms. The Kikai bugs, for example, are single-minded in the tasks that they are given, and are immune to fear. They can eat through a variety of materials, chakra included, as well as detect light and sound on a spectrum that humans cannot, making them excellent lookouts. Also among their fascinating abilities is the power to track an enemy by following the scent of one of their hive that has landed on that enemy. Shino made use of all of these abilities on a regular basis. This very moment, in fact, he was using their lookout capabilities and their tracking power simultaneously. He had thrown the shuriken at the boy, Hikaru, for two reasons. The first, of course, had been to disrupt the K-jutsu that had been aimed at Sakura. The second purpose had to do with a conversation that Shino had had with Neji just after the skirmish in the waterfall cavern. "They will come again," Neji said. "They will keep coming until they have what they came for. We don't know what kind of power or trickery they have backing them up, so it is possible that they may be successful after a few attempts, or possibly even the next attempt." Shino nodded. The Hyuga Junin had always had a good head on his shoulders, and he still had one now. His own instincts agreed with everything that Neji said. "Hinata-sama appears to be their target," Neji went on. "As one of her guard, as well as her cousin, I won't allow her to be taken. I want you to help me take preventative measures." "What kind of preventative measures do you mean?" Shino asked, keeping his voice down. He and Neji both knew that if Naruto heard of this, he would want to do it himself, and while he had undoubtedly improved in many areas, he was a ninja more suited to cure than to prevention. "Did you manage to put a bug on either of the attackers?" Neji asked. "No," Shino replied. "The powerful pesticide produced by the female prevented any of my insects from reaching them as they ran." The Uoken master's face betrayed no sign of dismay. He had either expected that response based on the accounts he had been given, or he was simply as disciplined as was needed to keep a cool head in the situation. Rather than lose heart, he acted as a true leader and followed the situation to the next step. "The next time they appear," Neji told him, "put a bug on one of them as soon as possible. You'll be able to follow them if they run, and then you might capture one of them when they are off the guard, or at least learn something about their intentions." So when the shuriken had stuck itself in Hikaru's arm, it had brought more than pain to the light-haired youth. The female Kikai bug had nestled down in his clothing, emitting the silent signals that only her male counterparts could detect. Shino now followed these signals as his insects picked him up, entrusting the search for Neji and Kiba to their other teammates. Sakura had as good a guess of where to look for them as he himself did, and he was certain that Neji, in the same situation, would rather have him pursue the Cloud team as well. The living hive passed through the makeshift tunnel that ran under the south barricade. Noting the dry smoothness of the surfaces inside, it had obviously been created by wind erosion. Also astounding was the distance that the enemy had covered in so short a time. This third shinobi in the blue robe was definitely powerful. Shino felt he would need to fully exercise his stealth capabilities to be able to enter and leave their camp safely, and capturing any of them would be out of the question if the wind user was anywhere nearby. He followed the trail of the female bug southward into the blasted, rocky area where the buzzards slept. Here Shino found that the trio had rested for a little while. There was a collection of disturbed dust and random footprints near one of the spires. The scent of the bug had been fairly weak going from the exit of the tunnel to this point, since they had run so quickly that the signal had been dispersed in the air. Here, though, it became stronger as they stopped, and remained strong as Shino pressed on. Their pace had slowed past this point. Sensing an opportunity to catch up, he increased his speed. Eventually, after another 2 kilometers, Shino's search took him out of the rocky badlands and into a forested area which ran uphill towards the mountain's peak. He could see snow drifts only a few hundred meters up. He began to slow his pace, both to conserve energy and out of concern that the search would end soon. The group was fast, but they would not run much farther and be able to catch up with Neji's group when they left. And if they were stopped nearby, moving too quickly might cause him to blunder straight into their camp. The bugs told him that Hikaru was not far away now. The scent was growing stronger. Shino withdrew a kunai from his equipment bag, preparing to fight his way out of any traps that may have been set. However, before he caught sight of his target, the bugs gave a sudden warning. There was a human behind the brush at his 4 o'clock. Immediately, Shino slowed to a halt, coming to rest with his back against a massive tree. Silently, he asked the bugs to provide him with details about the human. It wasn't Hikaru, for the scent of the female bug continued for some distance. Was it the Wind Master, then? The bugs answered that the details were blurry, that water was confusing the sensory input. Whoever it was in some body of water. Carefully, silently, Shino scaled the great tree and looked down beyond the bushes. He couldn't see a person there, but a stream was running downhill from the mountain peak, which explained the water. Also, there was a pile of clothing laying just within his line of sight, at the edge of the stream. Whoever was out here was bathing in the mountain water, then. They must have been doing it on the opposite side of the tree from him, as well, since their clothes were nearby and he could not see them on either side of him. But who was it? Focusing his vision in the dark, he struggled to examine the pile of clothing on the stream's bank. The clothing was simple, for the most part, but in the pile Shino could see a massive black cloak. In that instance, he knew that he was dealing not with the Wind Master, but with the female plant user, Ayaka. This seemed to be bad news for him. Because she was female and bathing and her 2 teammates were male, she was likely to be alone, so he could not eavesdrop on any important conversations. Capturing her would be easier in the vulnerable state that she was in. No, he would be unable to do anything beneficial to the team in this situation. It would be best to continue pursuing the loud-mouthed, less careful Hikaru. He leaped down from the tree, ordering his bugs to pursue the scent again, but as he touched the ground and prepared to run again, a voice called out to him. Stop there, Aberame Shino. It was the voice of the woman shinobi. She had detected him. What was going to happen now? Hikaru was probably very near, and she could easily call to him for assistance, which could lead to the Wind Master joining the fray. And if the Wind User was nearby, defeat would be assured. It seemed that his reconnaissance sortie was compromised. But Shino stood silent and still, waiting and listening for the consequences of his carelessness. But Ayaka did not call out to her teammate. She did not say anything at all for a long moment. Shino could not hear movement, but with skills such as hers, she could likely move silently even through the running water. Suddenly he had an idea. Had her command to halt simply been a ploy to give herself time to dress, so she might fight him herself? But eventually she spoke again, saying, I had thought that the Hyuga would send one of you after us, if not you personally, then the dog and his master, at least. The branch members are predictable, protecting their charges aggressively. One of Shino's bugs came back from around the tree and reported that Ayaka was still in the water. This confused him greatly. Why was she not taking steps to jeopardize him? Something was amiss here. Then he remembered what she had said to him earlier, as she had glided away from the cliffs. I hope one day to fight you on a more level playing field. Was this what it was about? Did she want to fight him here and now, personally? You are alone and unarmed, he said, hoping to bluff her. If you will not answer my questions, I will KO you and move on to your teammates. I expect I won't be alone very long, she said. My teammate, Hikaru, is juvenile, foolish, and perverted. At any moment he may arrive in a nearby tree to peer down at me. What would you do then, Aberame? There was no emotion in her voice as she spoke. Instead she was cool and logical, much as he was. Shino understood why Naruto did not get along very well with him at times. Being logically refuted was cause for annoyance. However, he had much more patience than his orange-clothed comrade, and was not about to lose his cool so easily. I have observed both your fighting style and your teammates, he countered, and by your own admission, the juvenile's effectiveness is greatly reduced in dark places like this. Also, you are away from your cloak, which I have observed holds the seeds that you use to grow your weapons. In this situation, I have a clear advantage even against both of you. Unless your teammate in the blue robe is also nearby, I see no reason for me to be afraid. Yes, if Kohei was near enough, you would undoubtedly be K, but he is not here, Ayaka admitted, much to Shino's surprise. Was she serious? If you are not lying, he said, then you will yield to my questioning. I know your clan, Aburame, came her reply, and I know that they are a people of rules and of honorable conduct. You would not attack me in my defenseless state, unless I initiated combat myself. I am in no danger if I do not answer to you. Naruto would have snapped at this point. Shino's eyebrows narrowed in frustration. The woman was right, and though he was more patient than Naruto, there would not be much else that he could do if she did not start talking now. How do you know my clan? He asked, deciding to play her game. There has been no record of our involvement with any clan of plant users in our logs. Ah, Ayaka said, so they did not record it after all. Practical, considering how silently and quickly it fell apart. So quiet as to be insignificant. You are stalling for time, telling me this to placate me while you wait for your captain to return, Shino accused. No, I am not, Ayaka rejoined in an annoyed tone of her own. Though if I wanted US immediately, that would be logical. Your immediate death by Kohai's hand, however, would not be satisfactory to me. Not with the vendetta between myself and your clan. Shino was about to ask what this vendetta was. He had never heard of such a thing. But Ayaka was not finished speaking. I will tell you nothing that you do not already know, or will not figure out for yourself, Aburame Shino. My comrades and I have been ordered to capture Hyuga Hinata alive, as well as the Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto. Shino almost could not contain his surprise at the mention of his blonde-haired friend. What did Naruto have to do with the cloud's designs? How had she expected them to figure that out for themselves? I can understand why you would be after Hinata, he said, taking into account the fact that your village has desired the Byakugan for years. But why are you trying to capture Naruto? That, I could not tell you if I were willing to. You would need to ask our client. Their client? Shino wondered. If they had not been given this mission by the superiors in their village, then who was it that would have hired them for this? Akatsuki, he knew, was after Naruto, but they would have little use for Hinata. Much thought would be required to unravel this tangled web. He did not have time to do the thinking here, however, as 5 kunai suddenly landed around him in a pentagon shape. Every one of them had something attached to it, which Shino was certain must have been special tags. He was caught in Hikaru's Kane ninjutsu. I've got you now, bug bastard, yelled the boy from above, forming the necessary seals. Nobody peeks on Ayaka-chan but me. Ninpu, go Inkinreiku. Secret art, 5 treacherous lightnings. 5 bolts of electricity, each one colored differently, struck the body of Shino straight in the chest and back. Hikaru crowed in wild triumph as the body vaporized in a flash of red, blue, yellow, brown, and white light. Jumping down, he stuck his foot into the ashes, grinding them into the ground. Ha ha, he yelled. Aburame this, Aburame that. Looks like he wasn't anything at all, in the end. I win. No walking hive is better than. His words suddenly see themselves off as a flight of insects zoomed up around his head and winged away into the night. So the Aburame is nothing, is he? Said Ayaka. She stood over him now, fully clothed and looking amused. He seems to be quite good, since he foiled the mighty Hikaru's ultimate attack with a simple mushy bunshin. Hikaru merely fumed, staring at the ground where the bug bastard had been. Ayaka looked up into the night sky, her face a mask of ice. But as good as you are, you will in the end, Aburame, and I will be the cause. Ooh. When alone and face to face with an entire legion of skilled shinobi, there is a certain set of prescribed logical responses listed by the textbooks for shinobi to follow. At the top of the list is the option that most shinobi in their right minds would choose: run away, and fast. Of course, there are certain situations in which it is impossible to run away. In these situations, your response can vary depending on the battlefield situation. If you know there are allies running to catch up with you, a smart option is to hide. If hiding is impossible or there are no nearby allies to come to the rescue, and are not in possession of a powerful weapon capable of massive damage to the enemy, it is a wise choice to destroy yourself rather than be taken alive, for the enemy may gain much through your capture. On the other hand, if you are in possession of a mighty weapon, then the book offers you the option to hurl yourself at the enemy, using the weapon to inflict heavy casualties before you are. Haruka had no material weapons other than her own body. However, she had a temper and a drive to win that was more potent than 10 crates full of exploding tags. All that was needed was to light the fuse. The enemy had a force of 400 Cloud Chunin and 135 Cloud Chunin, all of them trained for large-scale combat operations. These shinobi were at home in mountainous regions, the terrain favored them. Behind them were approximately 1,500 soldiers bearing the standard of the Lightning Country. Behind those were catapult crews, the same ones, apparently, that had blown the hole in the wall. At the head of this large company was a short, dark-haired Chunin attended by a single Chunin, who followed behind him reverently, as though he were in the presence of God, though the Chunin was easily a foot or more taller than him. The lead Chunin's sharp, beady black eyes surveyed the area before him, taking note of the current amount of damage to the town. It wouldn't be worth taking if it wasn't going to be intact by the end of the battle, as well as the apparent number of enemies inside. And he took note of one more thing, a female lying prone behind a fallen pillar, peering up at his legion with silver eyes and engorged veins. "Oh," he said, cracking a smile. "How lucky are we? Our first opponent is a Hyuga." "Oh, we are extremely lucky, boss," chirped his attendant. The tall Chunin seemed very enthusiastic for his superior. "Indeed, we are lucky," responded the boss. "We have never had the opportunity to capture a Hyuga alive. After the last mishap 12 years ago, the most we have ever accomplished was cheating them out of a corpse. And of course, we were unable to glean any secrets from it, because the villains had tampered with it. But now," listening from below, Haruka knew that it was time to leave. She might have been battle crazy, but she was nowhere near stupid, and she knew a hopeless fight when she saw one. She'd have to come back after she had regrouped with Naruto and the others. She pushed herself out of her inadequate hiding place and took off at a sprint away from the enemy. The boss gave a little chuckle as his advance guard see her off. 4 elite Chunin flashed in front of her, brandishing all manner of weapons. "I'm afraid that you won't be escaping, Lady Hyuga," called the boss. "Though it wasn't our original mission to capture you, a live Hyuga will be a fine trophy, worth a considerable amount of honor. I suggest that you relax and allow yourself to come with us quietly, for all of our sakes." Haruka looked around her with wide eyes. One moment, she had been fleeing at top speed. The next, she was caught, without having been tricked or trapped, but merely outrun and outmuscled. How did this happen? Never mind, she knew. These were the attacking army's finest shock troops, fresh from their camp, and while she was herself a very capable fighter, she had walked a considerable distance and fought in a major battle in the same day. So on top of being outnumbered and outclassed, she had less energy. Damn it, she thought. I should have run the moment the wall blew instead of sitting here gawking at them. Well, Hyuga-sama, called the boss, mockingly. Will you surrender, or is your clan's famed sense of pride forbidding you from even speaking to us low lives? Haruka's lips pulled themselves back in a snarl. This man was really irritating, and there wasn't a goddamn thing that she could do about it. She would now be separated from Naruto and the others, carted off to Kumogakure no Sato, see up and experimented on so that the Cloud could try to obtain the Byakugan that they had failed to get from Hyuga Hisashi. She would spend the rest of her life chained to an operating table, like Keisuke had so many years ago and probably was now. No sound came from the vocal cords that had long ago worn themselves out, but she could read the words that his lips formed. Haruka, help me. On her own table, she reached her arm towards him, trying futilely to close the distance. But then, her arm was gone. She could no longer see it, because her own eyes, her brilliant silver eyes, had been removed. Haruka could do nothing to help Keisuke, because she was as blind and as powerless as he was. This outcome was unacceptable. You, she said, feeling rage bubble up from inside. Chakra flooded her core, pulsing in her heart and in her forehead, where the caged bird seal, rendered fundamentally changed by Keisuke years ago, tinted it with sick, yellow color. The elite Chunin surrounding her tensed as they sensed the fighting energy in her, and the twins tightened the grip on her arms. Their strength, however, was insignificant next to the strength of the sadist's anger, and as Haruka heaved herself into an accelerating spin, they found themselves unable to hold her. Eventually, the force became so great that they could no longer hold onto her, and they went sailing through the air away from her. Bastards! Haruka yelled as they crashed into separate piles of wreckage. The boss looked on with amusement as the action unfolded. He had expected the Hyuga to put up resistance. Their pride could only take so much, after all. Watching, he saw Haruka increase her chitin's speed and power dramatically, until the radius engulfed the two buildings on either side of her. The male twin was too slow and got caught by the growing blast, which hurled him away several hundred yards. He did not come back. The female was quicker, and escaped. The man with the katana and the one with the tonfa both were able to leap clear of the chitin, but the man with the tonfa was struck by a massive load of debris from the nearby burning house that had been hurled his direction by the maelstrom. He was knocked aside and half buried beneath it. The two fighters that remained stayed clear of the whirlwind, waiting for Haruka to emerge from it. They waited for almost 10 seconds before the enormous yellow-tinted chakra finally began to decrease in force. Gripping their weapons, they took opposite sides of her as they anticipated the woman's follow-up attack or flight. However, when the winds finally eased up to the point where they could see the eye of the storm, it was not a mortal woman that they saw. It was an angry female demon. Molten silver pupils radiated a sense of K-lust that accentuated its aura of illness and instability. The detestable seal on its forehead blazed with yellow M. The image was intricately crafted to inspire fear, and it did its job well among the onlookers, even the boss himself momentarily sickbed, taken by surprise at this sudden display of volatile rage. It looked out at them for only a heartbeat before it moved, aiming straight for the katana wielder. The new target was less afflicted by the fear, and was able to move. As she dodged the first lethal attack, she wondered what the Hyuga woman had done to acquire such strength so suddenly. When she and her comrades had gone after her initially, the Hyuga had been nowhere near this fast or strong. What fueled this angry power? The boss, now over his fear, appeared to be unconcerned, though the loss of 4 of his elite guard was a near inexcusable loss that his superiors would be loath to hear about. His Chunin attendant looked mortified, but he chose to ignore that. The whelp was fresh to war, anyway, and would eventually get used to seeing this kind of thing. Even so, this had gone far enough. All right, Hyuga-sama, he called down, are you quite done? You've had a good amount of fun there, but I still have an army at my back. It's time to come along, now. The demon, Haruka, growled at him as she began walking slowly and purposefully towards the broken wall. He gave a hearty laugh. This was just too entertaining. Planning on Kami now, Well, we can't have that, of course. Let's see how strong you are when you have an entire legion at your tea. All units, engage. Capture the Hyuga alive. There is no clear record of the exact events that followed the boss's command to attack. No surviving Cloud or Lightning Country forces have come forward to testify, and Haruka herself was too busy fighting to remember who, how many, and how she came. Later, a body count was done within a 50-yard radius of the hole in the barricade in an effort to estimate the number of the angered sadist's victims. The Sand forces conducting the investigation found a total of 52s and 15 maimed into immobility within that radius. Among that number were 7 confirmed Junin, as well as the infamous Cloud General known affectionately among his troops as Boss. Haruka stood over the bee of the boss, growling, snarling, and spitting at the mass of soldiers and shinobi that struggled to seize her. She flailed her tainted chakra in all directions, striking whoever and whatever was within range. She would not surrender to them. Hyuga Haruka, proud captain of the Hyuga Guard, would never surrender, and she would never Not until a blind relic was free of Orochimaru's hold. But the sea of enemies, incensed over the death of their leader, was about to literally drown her. The fear-inducing genjutsu that she had projected around herself had now faded, and her 360-degree vision had become blurred. The one thing that she could see with any distinction was the face of the tall Chunin attendant, his eyes wild with grief and anger, as he swung his fist at her. And as she at last fell to the ground, her vision on the verge of blacking out completely, the young man's face became the face of a weathered shinobi with no eyes, which cried out soundlessly to her. Help me. I tried, Keisuke. I really tried. Ooh. What the hell was that? Naruto yelled. I thought the sound were beat. He and the others had just seen and heard the flashbang of the third collapsing wall. It had flashed before it had banged, a burst of bright white light that lit the village like a sun, and the noise had been much like the crack of a thunderbolt. Shouts of surprise, inquiry, and command were being thrown back and forth among the Sand forces around them. The sound didn't come with siege engines like those, Neji reasoned, or they would have used them at the very beginning. The sound never had siege weapons, Sasuke said from the ground. They've always relied on their allies for those capabilities. And the rock did not go this way to Konoha. Neji gave the prisoner a hard stare, clearly desiring him to shut up. Few could blame him, as the Uchiha's comments could easily distract the team when they should have been focusing on the events at hand. Naruto, though, accepted the information he offered. Okay, he said, so it's not sound. Oi, you sand guys. That wasn't one of yours, was it? A passing sand Junin confirmed the negative. The blast hadn't been caused by either them or the sound forces. Teams had already been dispatched to see who the culprit had been. Damn it, then who the hell was it? Naruto wondered vehemently. Could it have been the hidden mist? Sakura asked. Ibiki-san said that Orochimaru might have recruited him to his side. Everyone gave a nod of approval to that thought, with the exception of Hinata and Sasuke. The latter simply lay in his bonds, watching events play out in a bored-looking fashion. Hinata, a concerned look on her face, glanced in Neji and Sakura's direction. I don't think it's the mist, if the attack is coming from that direction, she said. What do you mean, Hinata? Naruto asked, causing her to turn to him. He could hear the worry in her voice as well as perceive it in her expression. Something about this was really getting to her. Hey, he asked, what's wrong? I think I know what Hinata means, Neji said. The attack came from the northern part of the wall. To come up here, the shortest route that the mist could take would be through the southeast, the same way we and the sand came. If that were the case, then the sand would have had plenty of warning beforehand. So it isn't sand, sound, rock, or mist, said Naruto. There's no way Sunadba-chan would send any of our guys here yet, not so soon after the attack. That only leaves the cloud. Hinata finished. She looked positively sick with worry, and for good reason. The village that they now knew was actively seeking her out had sent their entire army down here. Kiba asked suddenly. He'd been silent a long time, withdrawn into himself in wake of his horrible experience. But at the mention of one of his precious friend's worst enemies, he temporarily woke up to action. Cloud military. Here. No way. He yelled. Hinata, we've got to get you out of here. I agree, Neji said quickly. It is extremely dangerous to keep Hinata-sama here. If their strike force discovers her, they will attack relentlessly until she is captured or killed. We need to leave here now. Hey, what about Shino and Haruka? Naruto asked. Are we just going to leave them behind? Shino is safe, Neji said. He is doing something that I asked him to outside of the village. He should meet us before morning. Naruto stared at him a moment before deciding to trust him. Then, what about Nei-chan? Sasuke surprised everybody by saying, if it suits your needs, then leave her. If you leave here now, then even though you left one or two behind, the mission can still succeed. Everyone was quiet for a long moment. Naruto had rounded on the Uchiha and was glaring at him with terrible anger in his eyes. Sakura kept her head down while Neji kept a tight hold on Sasuke's bonds. Hinata looked on, unsure how to defuse the situation. Kiba simply stared and prepared for the worst. You were on Kakashi-sensei's team, Naruto began, grating out each sound, and you're telling me you don't remember the very first thing he taught us. Damn you to hell, Sasuke. Those who break the rules are lower than garbage. But those who abandon their comrades are even lower than that. I remember it well enough, Naruto, Sasuke said. Then what the hell are you doing, trying to get me to leave Shino and Haruka Nei-chan behind? Naruto was red-faced and fuming now. Hinata wanted to reach out and calm him down, but Sakura intervened, putting her arm on the Hyuga girl's shoulder. This was between two bitter rivals, and Sakura had learned that in situations like these there was only so much that a girl could do. Sasuke glared back at Naruto, saying, if you want to be Hokage, Naruto, then you need to realize that at some point you need to stop blindly following the philosophies of others and adapt them to your life. If you never challenge anything, you will never understand how the world around you works. You want to survive this battle. Run away now. Following after the Hyuga woman will only get you killed. The glaring contest continued for another long moment. Naruto bared and grit his teeth in anger, and his eyelids clenched shut as he tried to get a hold on his emotions. Finally, he stopped trying to hold them down, and released them. Damn it, he yelled. I'm not going to let you drag me down this way. Even if I lose my life, I'm going to find Haruka Nei-chan. You guys can run if you want, but I'm staying. Naruto-kun. Hinata started fearfully. He was the same proud and brave young man she loved, but this was the part about him that tended to get him into the worst situations. If he threw away his life now. Naruto, Sakura said, intending to reason with him. Look over there. You can see the enemy now, look. There's hundreds of them, maybe thousands. How are you going to fight that on your own? The sand will help me, Naruto said as he turned away, checking his equipment. The sand have already been through one battle. Sakura argued. They're tired, and on top of that, there's only half as many of them as there are cloud. There's no way you can win like this. It doesn't matter, Naruto said. I still have to save Keisuke-ni-chan anyway, so there's no way that I can S here. If the enemy finds Haruka-ne-chan before I do, then I'll kick their asses all the way to hell and back to save her. But, Naruto, what if? No. What ifs? I might be conceited, but unlike some people, Naruto said with a backward glance at Sasuke, I don't consider myself too good for someone else's philosophy. A few moments passed in which the only sounds were Naruto preparing and checking his equipment one more time. Everyone had their own thoughts on what had just transpired, but at the same time they all knew one thing for certain, there would be no stopping their blonde comrade now. "Na Naruto-kun," Hinata said, stepping towards him bravely. I'm sorry. I know how much your friends mean to you, and I should have supported you from the start. If you'll let me, I'll go with you. Naruto stopped fiddling with his kunai pouch to turn his head and look at her. There was a sincere apology in her lavender-tinted eyes. He gave her a smile in spite of his recent anger. That's okay, Hinata-chan, he said. You don't need to be sorry. Stay with Neji and keep out of the fight. Like he said, they'll be after you to the ends of the world if they recognize you. It does not make much of a difference if she stays with me, Neji said, since I will go with you anyway. Everyone gaped at Neji, not having expected this response at all. He gave a sigh, and then shook his head briefly as a grim smile spread across his face. Naruto has a strange way of making me put my faith in him, he told them. If he holds to Kakashi-san's teachings that strongly, then they will be good enough for me. They stood mouths agape for a little while longer before Sakura let out a breath she'd held and capitulated. I guess I'm with you, too, she said. At this rate, you're all going to need medical attention anyway. So, what are we going to do if we get mixed up with all of those ninja down there? Neji thought for a moment, before finally saying, I'll think of something. Sakura's jaw dropped again. You want us to go into that? She pointed at the clash between sand and cloud that had already started, without a plan. Did you forget? Have you forgotten? Asked a masculine voice from out of sight, just who you're here with. Kuchio's no jutsu. Everyone shielded their eyes against the explosion that rocked the whole village. Smokescreen billowed up around them, a product of the most massive summoning that some of them had ever seen. When it cleared, they looked upward where the smoke had been to behold the form of their savior. The Gamma Royaban, frog boss, Gamabunter. All right, Naruto yelled up at the frog and the Sannin who rode on it. Gamma Royaban is here. Ero Sennin, you're not all bad sometimes. Jiraiya, who stood tall upon Bunter's head, beamed down upon him and gave a nod. Yosh, Naruto said. Me, too. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. More explosions. More smoke. 1,000 shadow clones filed into formation in the streets and on the roofs of nearby buildings. The sand forces stopped what they were doing to look at the new additions to their army, and were awed. Okay, Naruto yelled, let's go. The night was drawing to an end. The light of morning could be seen creeping up from behind the eastern horizon. This twilight, the beginning of a sunrise that was normally the most anticipated sight to be seen in the mountain village, illuminated the stone and wood as it always did. But the sight was nowhere near as anticipated as it had been before. All knew that when the sun did at last come up after that terrible night, the beautiful pink and gold sky would be obscured by the billowing black smoke that rose from the wreckage. The chirping of the birds would be gone, for they would have fled to safer skies. And the clean streets from which they normally enjoyed these great sights and sounds would be littered with charred debris and embers. It was in this setting that the last battle for control of the town was fought. The Cloud Shinobi, supported by the soldiers from their own lightning country, fresh from their march, stormed through the breach they'd made in the barricade, intent on taking the fortress and the surrounding area's resources for their own. The Sand Shinobi had no soldiers yet and, having just fought in a large-scale battle, were sapped in strength. However, they had a major advantage over the new invaders. 1,000 fresh warriors in orange and black were rocketing towards the enemy, intent on taking out as many as possible before the real, and therefore less expendable, fighting force was forced to start taking losses, while the strongest and most resourceful of frogs lumbered forward behind them, carrying Jiraiya of the legendary 3 on top of his head. Neji watched them go, smiling at his comrade's tenacity and marveling at his stamina. With power and stamina like that, Naruto and Jiraiya would single-handedly turn the tide of this battle, and possibly could do the same with the Greater War. He'd made a good decision putting his trust in him. Hinata-sama, he said, watching as the first wave of shadow clones clashed with the oncoming enemies, I know that you were serious about helping, but you should listen to your original instinct now. It will be difficult to keep you safe if there is an entire army after you. Please remain here with me. Hinata stared out at the intense violence that gripped the far end of the town. The first of the buncheons were beginning to go up in smoke, even in the first few moments. They were falling victim to long-ranged strikes from enemy catapult crews. They were unorthodox shots, as well. The shells broke apart on impact, releasing a strange green fluid that lit up like ball lightning when it touched the air. The blasts had a small radius, but everything that was touched by them was utterly obliterated. Several groups of clones had been wiped out this way before even reaching the front lines. I know, Neji-Nisan, she said, grimacing, but it's hard to just watch this. What if the real one is? He won't be, Sakura said. He said that he wouldn't remember. He never goes back on his word. That rhetoric was a source of courage for Hinata, but in the face of so much danger there was only so much help that could be found in it. She kept watching as Gamabunta leaped high into the air to evade a ball lightning shot aimed at him, attempting to come down on top of the catapult that had fired it. However, the war machine was nestled in a circle of heavy wooden spikes, evidently intended to repel just such heavy counter-assaults. Bunta changed course in time to avoid being skewered, coming down instead on a concentration of enemy soldiers, but the catapult was unharmed and continued to fire. The sand forces that began to join the fray alongside Naruto's buncheons began to take hits from those shots as well. They are doing very well against the enemy ninja, Hinata observed, but those machines are hurting them badly. I can't stop thinking that this will get worse before it gets better. Machines? Sakura asked her. What machines? It's getting lighter, but I still can't see the enemy main force very well. Catapults, explained Neji. They are the source of those bright flashes you can see down there, the ones causing the most damage. Really? Sakura asked. That Byakugan keeps on amazing me. The Byakugan. Suddenly, Hinata found a good way to stop worrying and start being useful, without painting a target on herself. Right now, she and Neji were the only ones who had a clear view of the enemy force in its entirety. In this situation, Neji-Nisan, she said, we could guide Sakura-chan and Kiba-kun to the enemy catapults. With their strength and our eyes, they could stop those shots before too many are hurt. Naruto-kun and Shino-kun would have a much easier time coming back. Neji, who had only just begun to think about it himself, gave her an approving nod. When protecting her precious friends, she was as much, if not more, a strong and capable leader as he was. He took a glance at Sakura and Kiba, measuring their combat strength. Sakura was a bit weathered, but all right, she would be able to do this. Kiba, however, was not yet out of his funk. Akamaru kept nudging him, trying to get him to take his eyes off of the shattered houses and blackened corpses. But no amount of gentleness could make him forget his irrevocable mistake. Neji addressed him verbally, hoping that authority would reach him better than coaxing. Kiba, he asked, tell me, your captain, if you are able to continue battle. Fortunately, the dog keeper had not been pushed over the edge by his experience. He was comprehending enough to turn towards his leader and acknowledge his question with a low grunt. He stood up, adjusting his gear for action even as he showed no signs of enthusiasm at the prospect. Though the probability for civilian death was significantly lower this late in the fight, any chance of a repeat accident seemed to be too high for him. Neji noticed this, and knew that it was bad to go into a fight with that kind of sour mood. You know, there is a chance that innocent people will be caught in the crossfire, he said, but at the same time, if those catapults aren't stopped, there is a potential that everyone here, innocent or not, will s. I think that the second possibility would be more difficult to live with. Kiba was motionless for a moment, absorbing the weight of the words. Everyone watched while Akamaru gave a small nibble on his arm, causing him to pat the dog's big snout. Finally, he gave a small nod, and affixed his radio to his head. He would be all right. Good, Neji said. Sakura, Kiba, begin moving toward the enemy force. We'll guide you to the first catapult once you're behind the village wall. Ooh. Suten, Tepudama. An enormous ball of water shot up from the mouth of the Gamma Oyabun, seemingly aimed randomly into the sky. Its trajectory carried it hundreds of feet in the air, arcing beautifully in the brightening sky. At the top of the arc, it met another projectile, whose own parabolic path mirrored its own, and they collided. The gun bullet and the ball lightning catapult shot exploded against each other in midair, making an effect like a miniature thunderhead. Having been unable to get close enough to the machines to crush them and seeing Sakura and Kiba moving in to take them out themselves, Jiraiya and Bunta had taken to shooting down the catapult shots themselves as they flew towards their targets. At first, there had been too many shots going off at once, and shooting them all down proved to be impossible. Once the first few catapults were destroyed by Sakura's earth-shattering hands under Kiba and Akamaru's defensive cover, Gamabunta was able to be more effective until, finally, enough had been taken down to allow him brief respites in which to attack enemy troops directly. His sword and massive feet put an end to many Lightning Country soldiers who tried to bring him down. When he had to stop to fire up at incoming shots, Jiraiya warded enemies away from the frog with well-placed Doton and Kaiten ninjutsu. This effective teamwork between summon and summoner prevented severe damage to the sand and their allies throughout the battle. As the short burst of rain fell from the sky, the sun broke out from behind the horizon, creating a magnificent section of rainbow. When the water fell onto an exhausted battalion of shadow clones, Sakura's voice called out on the radio. All siege engines silenced. We did it. It was followed, shortly after, by another announcement, this time from the Sand Commander. The enemy advance is contained. The remaining cloud forces appear to be retreating. The real Naruto, worn out from maintaining over 400 of his original 1,000 bunshins over the approximate 1-hour period and maxing out the chakra on all of them, stood leaning against the village barricade, gasping for breath. But he managed to grit his teeth and grin against the skull in his side as he heard the news. The radio went off a few more times, as Sand Squad leaders reported to their various commanders on their statuses, as well as the apparent progress of the enemy retreat. When all of the Cloud Shinobi had vanished, leaving only the Lightning soldiers behind, Naruto allowed his shadow clones to disappear and sank onto the ground against the wall. When all the sand chatter s down, Neji's voice sounded across the airwaves. This is Hyuga Neji. All survivors from Konoha, respond. As Naruto was out of breath, the others beat him to the punch on the response. This is Sakura. I'm worn out, but all right. Kiba and Akamaru are in good health, too. Jiraiya here. Everything's fine, but you knew that already, didn't you? This is Shino. I have just re-entered the village. We'll rendezvous with you shortly. Naruto let out a sigh of relief. Though he trusted Neji, he hadn't been able to completely free himself of worry over his stoic comrade, even if he was the most annoying of them. It was good to hear the bug use his voice again. Consumed by this sensation of relief and in his exhaustion, he almost missed the next transmission. Does anyone see Naruto-kun? Hinata's voice asked. I just saw all of the Cage Bunshin disappear at once. Is he all right? It gladdened the blonde even more to hear her. After hearing the acid cries of all the shinobi and soldiers that had tried to K him and the death screams of those he had K, 1,000 times over, for he retained the memories of all 1,000 of his clones, the voice of someone who cared for his well-being without fearing him was a soothing balm. He smiled as he brushed dirt and dried bee from his torn orange jacket, then pulled off his Hittite 8 to run a hand through his grimy, sweaty golden hair. This was the calm after the storm, and he could now rest. I'm here, Hinata-chan, he said into the radio. I'll need a bath and about 100 bowls of ramen, but I'll be all right. Good to hear, said Neji. Yeah, Naruto said. Hey, Kiba, you there, dog breath. Not still flipped out on us, are you? For a moment, he could hear some odd noises over the radio, occasionally penetrated by loud canine barks. Eventually, though. The voice of his half-bestial comrade sounded from the speaker, full of the same exhaustion that Naruto was, but otherwise healthy. Doing better than you look, Naruto. I can see you over there, flopped up on the wall. What did you do? Break both your legs. Moron. Looking around, Naruto found the figures of Kiba, Akamaru, and Sakura waving at him from the destruction of a faraway catapult. His smile widened. It seemed that his red-marked friend had found his fighting spirit again. Nah, my legs are fine, he responded. My stomach is me, though. I haven't eaten since last night. Last night being about 6 hours ago, with Hinata. Yup, he's back, Naruto thought, knowing that Hinata would be embarrassed and a little bit embarrassed himself. But as last night was a fond memory of a sort and he was feeling too happy to have his friends alive to care, he let Kiba go unscathed. What about Haruka-san? Sakura asked. Naruto, did you find her? Naruto's good mood fell through the floor in an instant. He hadn't found her, or even a shred of evidence that she had even been in the village. His smile disappeared and a look of pain and anger appeared on his face. He blamed himself for not being fast enough. Exhausted as he was, his nerves were as his good mood, and he was able to drag himself up off the ground and begin walking back to where he had left the others. Naruto, this is Neji. Respond. He let out a sigh before saying, no. I didn't find Ne-chan anywhere. I was too late. Ooh. It wasn't your fault, Naruto-kun, Hinata said. She had Naruto's jacket and shirt off and was busily attending to his injuries. Her face was straight, she had to be serious taking care of a patient, after all, but not entirely clear of pink tint. Though the better part of her knew she didn't mean it, she found herself thinking in a small corner of her own mind that he ought to be injured more often, just so she could keep looking at that magnificent torso. Listen to her, Naruto, Sakura said. There was no way you could have known the cloud would show up. They probably took Haruka-san completely by surprise, so there's no way you could have made it in time. I know, Naruto growled. He winced slightly as Hinata's hand brushed a tender bruise on his abdomen, then returned to his task, cleaning his equipment. He'd lost a number of kunai and shuriken in the extended battle, and so he'd had to collect from the ground and from the corpses to resupply himself. Many of them were filthy. No, you don't know, Sakura insisted. That's why we're telling you. This is one more reason why you shouldn't have stayed here, interrupted Sasuke darkly. All you've done is waste everyone's time, for the sake of someone who was already dead. Crack. Shut up, Sakura said. I can't ignore you anymore. If you don't have anything useful to say, then keep your hateful, back-ass mouth clamped shut, or I'll shut it for you. It was actually the second time that Sakura had physically struck Uchiha Sasuke, but everyone present besides the two of them was witnessing it for the first time. Everyone, with the exception of Shino, who was as stoic and non-expressive as usual, and Naruto, who had his back turned and did not turn it now, was looking at them with a newfound awe. To think that Sakura, who was once so powerless against Sasuke, would now strike him with the same force as that with which she had once struck Naruto. And as for the mighty Uchiha, who had been silenced by a single kick, everyone now held a question in their minds about him as well. Sasuke appeared disoriented for a moment before he registered that Sakura had hit him again. When he regained his focus, he glanced up at Sakura, fixing her in his dark eyes. The girl stared right back, unwavering, solid and unmoving in her ultimatum. Sasuke could see that she would no longer capitulate to his dark and mysterious will. She truly was another person from the Sakura he had left 3 years before. Seeing that she was no longer malleable in his hands, he stared at her a long moment, then turned his eyes on Naruto, trying to see what effect his words had had on him. But Naruto did not appear to have any reaction to Sasuke's vocal jab. He simply kept on cleaning his equipment while Hinata, momentarily frozen in the suspense of the moment, sat still with her hand on top of a bandage she had been in the middle of applying to his left arm. This surprised everyone. They'd expected a fiery and immediate retaliation. When he'd finished with the kunai he had been cleaning that moment, he stood up. His face was the false mask of cheerfulness that he'd developed in childhood, dulled somewhat by exhaustion, but nonetheless recognizable. It's all right, you guys, he assured his team. I don't have the energy to play his game right now. Maybe it's for the better. I never proved anything by yelling at him, anyway. He bent down to retrieve his jacket and pulled it on. Not even bothering to look at Sasuke, he began to wander off into the wreckage of the village. Nobody said a word as he disappeared behind a collapsed store building. Everyone watched him go with sadness on their face. Naruto had been forced to grow up fast, and the process was still continuing. Neji noted that Sasuke stared after the blonde, too. It was the familiar expression, the same one that he had noticed before when Naruto had left the Uchiha in his tent the previous morning. Only this time there was more intensity in it. The traitor's mind had been destabilized by the exchange, and Neji did not need his Byakugan to see it. Face stern, he leaned in close to Sasuke's ear and whispered. Unfortunate for you. The last two people in the whole world who cared about you have finally turned their backs. It will be difficult to manipulate them into facilitating your escape, now. As Sasuke whipped his head around to glare daggers at Neji, the Hyuga Junin brought his hand down to connect with the traitor's face. It was not an open palm Murokan-style attack, it was a straight, close-fisted punch that landed squarely on Sasuke's cheekbone. Sasuke grunted in pain as the unexpected punishment redoubled the agony from his earlier injury. That was for my future brother-in-law, he whispered. Then, more loudly, Hinata-sama, please go and get Naruto. If Haruka-san has not come back by this time, we must assume that she is either S or captured. It is difficult to leave such a heroine behind, but we do not have any other choice. If we delay any longer, Orochimaru will reach the grave before us, and our chances of rescuing Keisuke-san will drop significantly. We can only put our faith in Haruka-san, and hope that she is alive and able to escape. Everyone's heads lowered at the prospect of leaving the heroine of the Hyuga clan to her fate, but Hinata nodded. Hi, Neji-nisan. She rose from where she had crouched while tending Naruto's wounds, and began walking the way Naruto had gone. As she passed the twice-struck Sasuke, she burned her eyes into him. She felt the impact of her gaze hit home against the traitor and, satisfied, hurried off after her orange-clad love. Kiba almost visibly recoiled. The fire she had seen in his teammate's eyes just now. If there had ever been a time when Hinata had looked ready to end someone, or even eager to be violent at all, it had been just now. The feeling it had generated in him was halfway between disbelief, concern, and terror. He could only hope that the latter was what had infected the target. Just in case it hadn't, though, he took the opportunity to walk up to the already bruised traitor and dish out a kick of his own. Akamaru joined him, biting down hard on Sasuke's leg. That's for all the innocents you destroyed, you bastard, Kiba said. And Akamaru's giving you one for the injury your sound flunkies gave me back in Konoha. What goes around comes around, jerk. Sasuke, now B from the side of his head and from his leg, simply gazed up emptily at him. The back's thoughts were unreadable. Kiba, Neji, and Sakura could only hope that they were unpleasant. Ooh. Naruto trudged through the ashes of the ruined marketplace. This area had been among the hardest hit. Ninja from the sound and the sand had met and clashed here for a long time before the sand had finally gained the upper hand and begun pushing them back. Everything that could have burned burned. Kunai, shuriken and a large assortment of other weapons were stuck into charred dirt and wood, and others simply lay about where they had been dropped. The place was littered with shinobi. Thinking back only a few hours, he could imagine the fun he had been having here with Hinata, the release of stress it had provided. If not for that, the stress he'd suffered this night and the stress he'd had before might have been too much. What was he going to do for comfort when he was far away from such conveniences? When he'd said he wouldn't mind hanging out with Hinata more often, he'd meant it, but would there be another chance anytime soon? Not likely. Now, Haruka was gone, possibly yes. Kyuubi would be having a field day when he finally fell asleep, which wouldn't be long now. He was so tired. Something caught the sunlight and glinted in his vision, just as he felt a wave of anger approaching, which distracted him from his thoughts. A small sculpted head with spiked hair, and the face of the Yondaime Hokage. It was poking up from a pile of ash and some blackened shelves, the wreckage of the store where Haruka had played her last prank. Naruto walked over to it, transfixed by the brightness it reflected. When he bent low and pulled it out of the ash pile, it was miraculously unharmed, except for the residue left on it by the ashes. It was as whole and as lustrous as it had been the night before, where everything else had been destroyed in the fire. He stared at the small Hokage in his hand, wondering at how it had survived. This thing, he thought, it caused me so much embarrassment. And it survived through all of that. He sucked in a deep breath to calm himself, letting it out slowly. As the sun cleared the last of the mountains and poured golden light onto his head, he packed the statuette carefully in his bag. There was no way that he would let it get away from him. "Nei-chan's alive," he said to himself. "As long as I know that, I know she'll find us again." Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to see Hinata coming at him. He knew what she wanted, and he'd go with her stoically. Haruka would not have expected less of him, and neither would Keisuke or the Yondaime himself. Ooh. If it had been hard subduing the white demoness, as they called her, it was at least twice as hard keeping her subdued. Oh, she had been a perfect angel while she was unconscious, and she had been unconscious the whole way to the forward command center, but once she was awake. The poor team of Junin assigned to guard her had already heard more than enough out of her. Since she had come to 3 days ago, she simply had not stopped spouting vehement nonsense about how moronic they looked, never failing to point out the slightest, most insignificant flaw about one of them in a way that irritated and occasionally embarrassed them to no end, and about how she could escape in a heartbeat if she chose. And always there was the regular declaration that once she was free, she would return with him, and bring retribution crashing down on their heads. The identity of him was never cleared up. It was a different name every time, and usually the names were degrading. Some things were established, however, and these were reported to the higher-ups. He was blind, noted for several instances of stupidity, as well as some kind of father and a foe who demanded respect. I almost wish that he would show up now, just so the bee would shut up about him, the lead guard said to one of his underlings. This comment prompted a whole new slew of insults. "I don't think I can wait, senpai," responded the younger Junin. "Hey, I don't think it would hurt her too bad if we used it, what do you think?" The leader rubbed his chin, contemplating. It happened to be the most powerful sedative in the Lightning Country, capable of knocking out a person for 5 days at a time with only minimal danger of side effects. They weren't supposed to use it, since the medical team wanted to examine her with their own special brand of everything. In this case, he thought, I think that drastic measures are appropriate. Get the needle. The flunky hurried off eagerly to retrieve the syringe and the correct dosage. He returned in less than a minute, grinning happily that the white demoness would finally be silenced. As the door to the cell was opened, he was able to withstand the spitting verbal violence of the captive without any annoyance at all. You idiots have got some weak heads, to be this worked up over some word play. Even that eyeless moron can stand me running my mouth for a couple of days. You want to get really angry. Undo the wires and try me in a fair fight, you cowards. Then again, it wouldn't be fair if it was just you 4 against me. We have no intention of giving you any opportunity to escape, Hyuga-sama, said the flunky, raising the needle. You too. Like I'd let them, moron. The demoness yelled. You be, yelled the afflicted Junin. Your fault for not watching yourself, fool. I'm not completely defenseless because I'm tied up. Calm down, she'll shut up in a moment. Indeed, there is no need at all, said a voice behind him. The intruder caught the needle as the 2 Junin who had been closing in on Haruka turned and stared in shock at their fallen comrade. What? Said the remaining Junin. But the captain. Quote, it was not smart at all to leave only 1 sentry outside. Single sentries get lonely, and lonely sentries get S. The last Junin slumped to the ground. How ridiculous of me, mused the intruder, talking to an enemy who's already S. Well, it's about time Hiyashi sent some damned backup, Haruka said. She'd recognized her rescuer's fighting style as the Urukan style immediately. Neji-kun sent the report on the cloud days ago. The intruder did not say anything, but focused on the task at hand. He was tall and wore a plain black shinobi battlesuit with a full-face mask, showing only his silvery eyes. The Byakugan was active, scanning the entire area for signs of enemy patrols while he see the wire that bound Haruka. When it was finished, he helped Haruka to her feet. Let's go, Haruka Teiko, he said. Thanks, returned Haruka. These past few days have been so dull. By the way, your voice sounds familiar, do I know? This way, hurry. The rescuer interrupted, see her off. They will attempt to change the guard soon, and we must be far away by then. He took off at a run out of the cell and down one of the command center passageways leading deeper into the facility. Haruka, not wanting to be left behind and having had enough of Cloud Guards, followed without question. They ran throughout the interior of the facility, which was situated in a system of underground caves southwest of Kumogakure. Using her own Byakugan, Haruka could make out the chakra signatures of the enemy through the walls. Hey, she questioned, you sure this is the right way to go? I realize it's dangerous to go right out the front door, but there are a lot of enemies in the heart of the base, too. Haruka Takeo, do not fear. I entered this facility stealthily, and we will go out the same way. No, you won't, shouted a guard behind them. Sound the alarm. Damn, they're sneaky, Haruka cursed. How'd they get behind us without being picked up? The enemy has many skilled shinobi in their ranks, said her rescuer. Undoubtedly they were also briefed on the weaknesses of the Byakugan, its range capacities and blind spot. It isn't that surprising. Just keep running, Takeo, we're almost free. And so they kept running. Warning bells began to sound as they rounded 2 more corners, and the first intercept team met them shortly after the third. The rescuer dispatched the first 3 in half a heartbeat, and Haruka took care of the 4th and 5th as they missed their target and ran past him. In less than 3 seconds, the hall was clear again. This way, said the rescuer, moving a hidden panel out from the wall. The Cloud Generals use this as an emergency exit when the fortress is overwhelmed. We can use it to make our escape. Before Haruka could ask how he knew about this wonderful exit, he had leaped through it, and the only thing she could do was follow. He waited for her on the other side, closing the panel behind her. Haruka could see that they were in a tunnel that was almost pitch dark, but above her she could see a small light. She put more chakra into her Byakugan, increasing its intensity, and found that ample handholds had been gouged into the rock, which led straight upward toward the light. I suppose we climb up this way? She asked, rhetorically. And at first I thought you were good, seeing you work on those guys back there. Now I know, you're something else. Hiyashi ought to promote you. Thank you very much, Haruka Takeo, said the rescuer. Now then, shall we escape this rat hole? Haruka looked him in the eye. There was something about him that was familiar, but she just couldn't place it. She could hear it in his voice, and see it in the way he carried himself. Just what was it, though? It was difficult to see through the mask he wore when she was already straining herself just to see in the dark. Are you positive that we don't know each other? She asked. Are we not all family, Takeo? They climbed up the rock ladder, the rescuer first with Haruka close behind. It was a long climb, perhaps several hundred meters. When they emerged, however, it turned out to be well worth it. Haruka found herself on a high plateau, with nothing but green grass and blue sky all around her. She reveled in her newfound freedom, letting the gentle breeze blow through her hair. Hello sky, she called. It's good to be home again. Don't enjoy yourself too much, said her rescuer. Your companions are several days ahead of you already. If you do not hurry, they will reach the grave before you. Oh, so you found them all right? Haruka asked. Good. I knew Naruto-kun would make it. He and his friends are all tough ninja. Yes, I do agree. If you do not reach them soon, however, then Orochimaru may overtake them without you. They are skilled, but your support will be needed, Takeo, especially since the elite Cloud team is still after Hinata-sama. I suggest you hurry. They're still chasing her, Haruka asked. I would have figured that they would have been satisfied with having me. They don't know about the caged bird seal, after all. Of course, if they had heard that the main army had captured a Hyuga, then there would be no more need for them to seek her. That is why I redeemed you. This was strange. Why would a branch member be spared over the heiress to the clan? Sure, the clan was undergoing changes, but giving up the heiress for Haruka was still absurd. That didn't make any sense, she said. It makes perfect sense to me, said the rescuer. If the Cloud have a Hyuga already, then there is no motivation for them to carry out their end of our bargain. Now Haruka was really confused. What the heck was this? Bargain. I don't know what, ugh. She was interrupted by a jab that shot chakra straight through her front abdominal wall and her intestines to terminate at her spinal column. Immediately, she could feel herself slipping out of consciousness again. Enraged, but unable to fight, she focused her energy to her eyes in an effort to see through the mask, as she hadn't been able to in the tunnel. What she saw made her stomach turn. You, she gasped. Really? Haruka, said her new captor, I thought you would have guessed my Idini by now. Then again, perhaps the ailment of the Great Father has rubbed off on you. There were so many things that she wanted to say to the beast of a man that she saw, but blackness overtook her once again, and she found herself spiraling down in a torrent of anger and disbelief, feelings that would wait long to be expressed. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.